All right, folks, a month away from the race in Texas for the the primary for the United States Senate, who represent Democrats and Republicans in November. On the Republican side, you've got incumbent Senator John Cornyn, running against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. On the Democratic side, you got Texas State Representative James Talarico running against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Well, boy, things got a little funky a couple of days ago when a sister went on. Well, first of all, when someone went on social media claiming that Telerico, in a private conversation, called former Congressman Colin Allred, who ran last year for the United States Senate against Ted Cruz, a mediocre black man. That got social media a buzz, and then Colin Allred dropped this video on social media.
Morning, everybody. It's cold out here, and I got some steam coming off my head because I'm, just finished my workout. Got some steam coming out of my ears too. I understand that James Talarico had the temerity and the audacity to say to a black woman that he had signed up to run against a mediocre black man, meaning me, not a formidable, intelligent black woman, meaning Jasmine Crockett. Let me just break this down into a few segments here. First of all, let me just give you some free advice, James. If you want to compliment black women, just do it. Just do it. Don't do it while also tearing down a black man, okay? We've seen that play before. We're sick and tired of it. We're tired of folks using praise for black women to mask criticism for black men. That's not good for our community. It's not good. It doesn't work, and we know what you're doing, okay? So if next time you want to praise a black woman, just do that. Leave black men out of it. Just leave a lot of things out of it. Second of all, did you ever have a coach or somebody, a leader in your life tell you that when you make an accusation, you often have a bit of confession in it? Maybe you use the word mediocre because there was something creeping into your mind about yourself. Because I know you're not talking about somebody who's been better at 3 things than you've ever been at 1. You are not saving religion for the Democratic Party or the left. We already had Senator Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock for that. We don't need you. You're not saying anything unique. You're just saying it looking like you do. Okay? And third of all, let me just say to all the young black men out there, all the young men who come from tough background, struggle growing up, who maybe think that someday you want to put yourself forward as a leader in your community. It's going to have haters like this are going to show up. Okay? And you're going to feel like you have to be twice as good and jump twice as high and talk twice as well, but you don't have to. You can walk out there with your shoulders back and your head held up high, knowing who you are and the value that you bring, and understanding that this comes with the territory and that there's going to be folks like this. And when we see them, we should say thank you. Thank you for taking off the mask. Thank you for telling us who you really are and what you really think. And goodbye, okay? Because we're on our way, and we don't need you to come with us, and we don't need your help to get there. So with that being said, go vote for Jasmine Crockett. This man should not be our nominee for the United States Senate. I wasn't gonna get involved in this race, but listen, don't come for me unless I send for you, okay, James? And keep my name out of your mouth while you're at it.
And again, it was a podcaster who said that Telerico told her this in a private conversation. This is a statement released by the Telerico campaign. This is a mischaracterization of a private conversation. In my praise of Congresswoman Crockett, I described Congressman Allred's method of campaigning as mediocre. But his life and service are not. I would never attack him on the basis of race. As a black man in America, Congressman Allred has had to work twice as hard to get where he is. I understand how my critique of the congressman's campaign could be interpreted given this country's painful legacy of racism, and I care deeply about the impact my words have on others. I've always said that despite our disagreements, I deeply respect Congressman Allred. We are all on the same team. All right, Congressman Allred joins us right now. And first of all, he's a former congressman who's now running to get back to Congress, and so that's happening as we speak as well. So he's also on the ballot come March 3rd. Congressman, can I ask a question? First of all, when all this happened, did Telerico reach out to you, call you before or after you released your video?
Hey, Roland, good to see you. No, he did not. And I think that was one thing I was waiting to hear when all this was going around was a denial. but also, maybe an explanation. I have not gotten anything along those lines.
So, very interesting watching a lot of the social media discourse because even before this, you've had a lot of white progressives who've been very critical of Crockett, saying she shouldn't have run, that she's stopping Texas from having the best shot at winning this seat. And I've seen all sorts of stuff, and I've been like, first of all, and I've been blasting folks saying, first of all, most of y'all people ain't even from Texas. Y'all know jack about the
That's
state.
right.
You know how many counties in the state. You know nothing about the last Democrat to win. Also, you know nothing about the changing demographics. So really, shut the hell up. But the reality is, race has been back and forth in this whole deal, and now you have this here. And so, what do you make of that statement where he admits using the word mediocre, but that was describing your campaign and not you personally?
Well, listen, I believe the young woman who was part of the conversation, she was a supporter of his. She had nothing to gain and everything to lose. What was shocking to her would not have been criticism of my campaign. She was not a supporter of mine. She supported him against me. What was shocking to her was the formulation of calling me a mediocre black man. That's what upset her. And I believe her. And she had contemporaneous reports. And I think that it's important that when language like that is used, that it's called out, that we make sure that there's accountability, that I'm not just going to sit there and allow people to not only impugn me, it's fine if you want to criticize me, but when you use, a mediocre black man, now you're making this even more weighty in terms of, what you're saying. And I think that there's a lot of young people who are watching this, and I meant what I said in the video, who maybe someday see themselves as one to run for office, maybe see themselves as one to be a leader in some capacity, and may feel like that even if they've done a huge number of things and had an incredibly successful career, that they'll just be diminished and dismissed in this way. And I don't think that's acceptable.
You said in the video that you had no intentions of endorsing anybody in this campaign, but after this, you absolutely did. And so, what was that process for you?
Well, listen, I'm moving on, right, Roland? I got my own race, and I was going to, try and support whoever was the nominee coming out of it. And I'm friends with Jasmine. That's no secret. I've defended her during this process because I think that, just like you, I've been incredibly frustrated by the coverage of her by people in coastal states having these incredibly strong opinions of what's going to work in Texas, not knowing anything about what our actual struggle is when it comes to elections, which is oftentimes, yes, running against Republicans, but also running against cynicism and a deep feeling of despair that nothing is going to change, particularly in our minority communities. And knowing, as I do, because I go and talk to ordinary people, and hearing from them how they're happy to see me, they appreciate me and my service, and then they'll also often say, "And I really appreciate that, Jasmine," you know. And so I know that, and I have that on the ground experience that these folks don't have. And so I wasn't planning on engaging in this race actively, but I think that when you are someone who feels comfortable enough saying something like that, then now you've pushed me over the edge.
This obviously, they had a debate with Texas AFL-CIO and pretty much agreed back and forth. And so this really is a contrast in styles. Look, you've run statewide. You ran against Senator Ted Cruz last year. You ran in the primary, and then you ran the general. And so what do you make of the likes of James Carville and these other people who are weighing in who say, oh, no, the only way you can have a candidate win in Texas, they've got to be white, they've got to be a moderate, they've got to appeal to the suburban voters. And I had somebody on social media who did that, and I literally went back and I pulled the data, and I went like way back, and I went back to 1988, and I actually ran down all of the people who ran for United States Senate. And this was not the complete list, but when I ran this down, I'm gonna go to in a second. I mean, listen, you look at this list. There have been white men who've run, white women who've run, Latino, Latina, African American. You've had different people, and really, The two that got closest, Beto O'Rourke, of course, 2.5% to Cruz. Your race, I believe, was like 10 points. So this notion that there is a perfect candidate, be it a black woman or be it a Latino or white, I'm just like, guys, there's no such thing. And so that's what drives me crazy as a registered voter in Texas, these people who have no idea what the hell they're talking about in terms of what it takes to win in Texas. The problem in Texas is that it's 60% minority, yet 60% of those who vote are white. It is an unregistered, unorganized, non-mobilized state.
That's right. And, listen, our issue in Texas, as you said, is that we are disproportionately young in addition to being a majority minority state, right? So it's a dual factor, right? So we know that young people vote at a lower rate oftentimes, and we also have whole communities where we're seeing much lower turnout, and particularly our urban centers, which are our fastest growing places, are increasingly diverse, and increasingly we know that they need we need to do a much better job of turning folks out in those centers, right? And so there's no exact formula on how to do this, but I wish that people would quit being so certain about what they know that must be, right? Because I certainly know that, particularly in my career as a voting rights lawyer, but also running for office, that we have an enormous infrastructure deficit in our cities when it comes to turning folks out. But also, we need the candidates, and we need to make sure we have appeals that can reach into folks who feel like, listen, I don't want to go through all the hoops of jumping through all the hoops of voting in Texas. I've got a lot going on in my life. This is competing with 3 or 4 things that are more important to my daily life, having to take time out to go vote. And so that's why, to me, I think we do have to do both. We do need to try and persuade, some of the folks who are feeling, let down, or this is not what they wanted in terms of the Trump administration. But in Texas, our challenge is different than it is in a state that's been organized for decades and it's been a competitive presidential campaign coming through. We've not had that. This is not Ohio or Florida, even states that were recently competitive at the presidential level. We've been completely undeveloped. And so the certainty of it is interesting to me, particularly for people who are not in the state, haven't been to the state, or don't have been here recently. You can have an opinion, but the certainty is something that I find to be kind of interesting.
Well, I believe, again, as somebody born and raised in Texas, still registered to vote in Texas, parents there, brothers and sisters there, is that the issue that I see with Democrats in Texas, if there's a defeatist attitude. To your point, listen, Republicans have controlled the state for 30 years. I get a kick out of when I hear Greg Abbott or Dan Patrick start complaining about what Democrats haven't done in Texas. And I'm like, y'all have run the state. What the hell are you talking about? So you can't blame that one on Democrats. You've run the state. And the other thing is that what Democrats have done is they've focused, obviously, and I get it, on your large counties. Harris, where Houston is, look, Blue County, Dallas, Bexar County, San Antonio, Travis County, Austin. Fort Worth is the last large county that's red out of all the major counties. But the issue in Texas is that Democrats have been getting crushed in West Texas, in East Texas. And frankly, what you've seen is the drift of Latinos moving to the right, especially in South Texas. And so what has to happen, and I remember a conversation in 2012 with then Representative Chris Van Hollen, who ran the DCCC. He's now a United States Senator. We were waiting to go on CNN. This was after Obama won in 2012. And I asked him specifically about Georgia and Texas. And he said, oh, red states. I'm like, no, dude, they're not. I said, they simply are unorganized, and you guys haven't invested resources. Well, what happened after 2012? Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, and others, they focused on mobilizing Georgia. That's how Georgia has 2 Democratic United States senators, and how Biden Harris won the state. That's how you had 2 folks who ran just statewide on the Utility Commission who also won as well. Well, what Democrats have not done is they've just said, there's no way we can win Texas. And so if you make no effort to register the 2 million Latinos who are eligible but unregistered, if you make no effort where you have African-American voters in Texas, where you have the largest concentration of black voters in any state in the country, But when you have black voters in Texas voting anywhere from 48 to 52% or 54%, really what you got to get black turnout in Texas to be 65, 70, 75% to give yourself a shot. That means investing resources, putting people on the ground who are operating 365, 7 days a week. And frankly, that's not what has happened by the state and national party.
Yeah, and it's expensive, and I get that, right? But I think you're absolutely right. I mean,
It's expensive. It's expensive, but
yeah,
54 electoral college votes is a big ass haul too.
that's right. I mean, and we got to face it. We're going to add 3 more congressional seats, in the next census, right? So, I mean, it's going to keep going like this, and so we have to address this. And I think, you look at somewhere like Harris County, which has more people than I think in it and the surrounding area than Arizona does, right? Like there's a scale here that's pretty massive, and as Texans, you and I know that, right? Like we have some of the biggest cities you can possibly have, and they're not compact; they're geographically spread out, and that's a challenge. But that challenge requires a long-term response, but also candidates who believe and invest in it. And so that's why the certainty that people on the outside are projecting onto Texas of what will work here, frustrates me, because listen, we do need to try and make sure we're appealing to as many people as possible. But your persuadable voter in Texas might be a different persuadable voter than it is somewhere else, and that's what I'm trying to impress upon folks. When they're talking about Jasmine, is that who you think we need to persuade might look different and see politics differently than you do. And so who appeals to them might be different than what you expect. And I'm telling you, and I've seen this and I know this from my own experience that she does have an ability to connect with people who've been disconnected from politics. That doesn't mean that she's guaranteed to be successful, but I think to be disrespectful about it is outrageous.
The last point here, and that is, you've gone through the running statewide. Neither one of them have run a statewide race. And so what is your advice to both of them? I know you endorse Crockett, but advice to both of them with 1 month left before Election Day. You're running your congressional race, but they're having to run statewide. What do you say to both of them?
Yeah. Well, I think both, my experience talking to Texans, there's so many people out there who are wondering, does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I'm going through? Like, I feel like I'm doing everything right. I'm working hard. I'm playing by the rules, and I feel like I can't get ahead. And I've had so many experiences where people come up to me, and within a few minutes of talking, they'll be telling me their life story, oftentimes breaking down in tears. And I think there's a hunger out there for people who will speak directly to this moment that we're in, which is not just, it is economic, of course, but it's also a values-based thing. Do you understand what we are going through? That this has been, especially coming out of COVID, an incredibly difficult time, and that we are afraid that our communities are being terrorized by this administration that we see on TV, these folks who are openly corrupt, and they're doing fine and we can't. And in my race, in my congressional race, I also see that showing up. I'm running against somebody who's one of the top stock traders in the country. I never traded stocks when I was in Congress for 6 years. I think it's immoral and unethical in my opinion. But it's also something that shows up when I would talk to people in these diners and in restaurants. I'd talk about Donald Trump's corruption. They'd throw that back and say, what about the corruption in Congress? And they're absolutely right. So we need to have some truth telling. We need to try and inspire people about what can change. And I think it has to start with showing that you see and hear and understand what some of our communities who are really going through a sense of almost despair are experiencing, because that's how we'll turn them out to vote, but that's also how we'll shift our policy to be around working people in Texas.
Absolutely. And just real quick, I was just over here playing on the map here. Go to my iPad. Listen, y'all, you want to understand how critical Texas is? If you look at this map, if you give Republicans Nevada, Utah, Arizona, give them Wisconsin, give them North Carolina, South Carolina, give them Georgia, you give them Pennsylvania, give them Ohio. Guess what? All Democrats got to do is win Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois. You win Texas with the 4 electoral college votes. you get 274. So that's how so bottom line is, Democrats win California is 54, but when you concede Texas and Florida to Republicans, that's 7 electoral college votes right there. And so that's the message that, frankly, I would say to any Democratic leader. If you actually want to win, you got to put the money in there. And we're talking about, and I said it, I've long said that you got to look at putting $100 to $200 million into a state if you want to transform it, because you got to hit all parts of a massive state with 254 counties. And so you got these Democratic billionaires. That's how you actually win. Because what's happening right now, and you know this here, Congressman, Republican billionaires, they own Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick. They own Ken Paxton. They are pushing out millions of dollars to protect their interests, and that's how you win states like that. You don't win it on a hope and a prayer. You win it through investment.
Yeah, you got to have the investment. That's right. And they're, like you said, they're billionaires. They know what the return they're getting on their investment. So,
all right, Congressman Colin Allred, good luck in your race March 3rd. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
I'm going to my panel here. It's been very interesting watching when Cooney, I'm going to start with you, this whole back and forth. And I have been saying I've been responding to a lot of different people, to a lot of these white progressives. I've been saying, y'all need to shut the hell up. Because many of them, and I'm talking about, there have been people from Tennessee, California, Michigan, I had some dude from Australia. I'm like, none of y'all don't know a damn thing about Texas. I'm like, so how all of a sudden are y'all Texas political experts and you know how to win the state or what is required to actually win the state? It's some of the dumbest stuff I've ever heard, and it makes no sense. And here's the deal. If you are a Telerico supporter, good. If you are a Crockett supporter, good. But the reality is neither one are guaranteed to just win the state in November.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Roland. And the scary thing about it is we need to ensure one of them does. Like you said, we put that congressional map up there. When we really think about not only the road to 2026, but really the road to 2028, Texas is an integral piece to that puzzle. I think a lot of people are overlooking Texas as just a legacy Republican state. But like you said, Texas is slowly changing. It's not the bastion of Republicanism that it once was. So I think we really have to critically consider this. And to Congressman Allred's points, I think it's really interesting and even rich to hear, James Talarico call someone a mediocre black man. I think it's when you think of the trope, I wish I had the confidence of a mediocre white man. That's often what I think of when I see a lot of these, white men that really purport themselves as to be tenants and supporters of Black people, but really behind closed doors are no different from some of the people across the aisle from them. And so you really have to pay close attention to that. I think Texans will go out and make the right decision, but I myself was stunned but not surprised by when this came out, because I was one of the folks that were like, Telerico's not that bad. I prefer Crockett. But, after hearing this, it doesn't shock me at all. And I believe what was said. And I too would be like, all right, well, as a Black person, I can in good conscience vote for any white person that's saying that Colin Allred is a mediocre Black man. By far, he is not.
Several things have been going on. This happened over the weekend, Mustafa. Go to my iPad. Democrat Taylor Remett flipped a Republican state Senate seat. It was a special election, and they're gonna go at it again in November. Now, it's a lot of factors here. You had the Republican was involved in taking over a lot of different school boards. People were pissed off by that. You had Republicans who were running, who ran before the special election. 3 different Republicans, they split the vote. And so there are a number of different factors here, but the reality is this was a district that Trump won by 17 points. They had not had a Democrat representing them in more than 30 years. But this, and then also, this person is a union worker who works for Lockheed Martin. That is a huge issue, Lockheed Martin in that particular district. And this is the point that I am constantly trying to make to people all the time. And this is what I say: if you are a white progressive, if you are a Black Democrat, if you are a Latino Democrat, first of all, shut the hell up. What AOC does in New York, what Clyburn does in South Carolina, what Maxine Waters does in California, what Tammy Baldwin does in Wisconsin means nothing to this particular state. And I've always said, if you're going to run, you have to run according to your state and then according to your congressional district or your state senate or your state rep district. And so what are those particular issues? And so you've got people like Dana Lash who are saying, oh no, here was some other factors, it's not that big of a deal. Republicans are freaking out in Texas by saying we can't dismiss what happened. Anybody who pays attention should understand that when you run, it's local, 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 local. And I think if you're Telerico and Crockett, and if you're talking about the Texas race and you're spending lots of time talking about national, international issues, that to me is a huge mistake. You got to be zeroing in what's happening in Wichita Falls, what's happening in South Padre Island, what's happening in Midland, what's happening in the suburbs of Houston, when you talk about Pearland, other places, and speaking to those issues. And that's what it has to be about. And so, I'm not one of these people like, Mondani is the future of the Democratic Party. Nope. AOC is the future Democratic Party. Nope. That simply is not true. It's, can that person connect with voters in that state in order to get them to the polls?
I mean, you hit it on the head. You know, it is about, do you see me? Do you understand what's going on in my community, what the particular sets of needs are, what I'm worried about, what I'm also happy about, what I think, you know, we should also be doing more investments in. And lots of times, unfortunately, politicians start listening to the wrong folks, and they forget about, you know, everybody who's they're going to meet at the supermarket or after church or the mosque or the synagogue, wherever you might go, and being able to actually hear about what folks are needing. And that's the trick, really, when you actually get out of your own way and listen to folks. Spend some time on people's back porches. Drink some lemonade or some sweet tea with them and hear what's going on. Go to whatever the local community meeting is. Yep. And spend time there. But it has to be local. It has to be home focused. And when you don't do that, often you're not successful because folks don't feel that you're authentic, because they don't feel like you see them, they don't feel like you hear them, and they don't feel like you truly care about what's going on.
Joe, when Beto O'Rourke lost to Governor Greg Abbott in the gubernatorial race, 75% of voters 30 and under did not vote. Again, if you're a Democrat in Texas, you cannot win with 75% of young people don't vote. You cannot win if you're not driving up margins among African Americans and Latinos. Again, 60% of Texas is minority. 60% of the people who vote in Texas are white. That is how the state is red.
Yeah, and Texas is this sleeping giant that is yet to be awakened and can be awakened. Beto O'Rourke reminded us of something in terms of what he did, talking about, you know, what getting a sense for what's actually possible. If those kids voted, he could have won. Okay? And so therefore the numbers are there. The people are there. Okay? Now, let's keep it real. Assuming that Black folks come out and vote a lot, I'd like to think that they do with not only what's at stake, but with Jasmine Crockett in the race. I think Talarico's finished. And I was just like our other panelists here. I thought he was kind of okay too. I wouldn't have supported him over Crockett, but I thought he was okay too. And so now, here we are having these same conversations. But he's not going to drive Black voter excitement necessarily. We'll see. But my sense is that this would be a big problem that way. But in any event, to be reminded, Texas is this sleeping giant with all of these voters that aren't voting, and that this thing could be flipped. Because to your point, once Texas gets there, I believe Texas will get there one day. Once Texas gets there, right, and they're voting Democrat, it's over with. It's over with. Electoral college, even this undemocratic system we have, y'all still losing every time. Okay. And so we have to pay attention to it. Make sure people get out and vote. The game is the same. Doesn't matter what you think if you're not voting on it.
Yep. Simple as that.